But this gives you a little look at what we're going to be playing with here in a few minutes, and that is how to manipulate objects in 3D space in After Effects. And yes, you are going to see this information again on your practical exam at the end of the semester. So pay good attention, and I recommend that you practice this a lot so that you've got it down, because I don't monkey around when it comes to the grades for this assignment. You really are expected to have these techniques down. Okay, one of the things I do want to point out to you is that we are talking about something in After Effects called postcards in space. And postcards in space, what that really means is objects in After Effects by default have no depth. If you were to take this object and flip it completely on its side, it would disappear because it has no thickness to it. And that's why they call these this style of 3D work in After Effects postcards in space. If you flip the postcard up on its side, it will disappear. That all said, let's go ahead and get started. I would like for you to create a new comp. So we'll, let's see here, get back into this. And we can either go to composition, new composition, or the easier way is just to click the new composition icon. And we're going to set the length to 5 seconds. And we'll call this Postcards Practice. And we'll go ahead and click OK. Let's see, 5 seconds. Yes, 1920 by 1080. We're good. Okay. First thing I want you to do is to create a new solid. Layer, new, solid. And name it Floor. Make it any color that you want to. I don't know. I'm going to make mine kind of a greenish, teal green. You do whatever you want to do. And there's our floor. And we are now going to turn this into a 3D layer. Now, you should see a set of little icons here. And the one that's 3D is the one that looks like a little cube. And right below that is where you turn the switches on for each of the layers to create or to make that into a 3D layer. Now, if you cannot see these switches, you've got some little icons down here at the bottom that will turn on and off the switches. The first one on the left is the one that shows or hides the switches. And so be sure that is turned on. And then you can flip the little 3D switch on that layer. And now we need to rotate this layer. So as you remember, R is the keyboard shortcut for rotate. And we're going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis. You see how we got X, Y, Z right here. Okay, so here's our rotation. We're going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis. And true to my word, I made this disappear. How about that? So let's go ahead and make it reappear. We're going to do that by adding a camera. Layer, new, camera. And let's set that camera to a 2-node camera. Sometimes we want 1-node cameras and sometimes we want 2-node cameras. The difference is a 1-node camera just includes dolly, truck, and pedestal. In other words, dolly is left to right motion, truck is in to out motion, and pedestal is up to down motion. But in addition to that, a 2-node camera also has pan and tilt. So let's choose 2-node camera, and we'll choose a, under the preset, we'll choose 28 millimeter. And if your little checkbox for enable depth of field is checked, please uncheck it. That's the way it ought to look for us. Click OK. Now we are going to pedestal this camera up. So to do that, we're going to click P for position. And so here's our 3 sets of numbers. Before, you'll notice we only had 2 numbers. We had horizontal and vertical, but now we have horizontal, vertical, and depth. So horizontal in camera terms is truck. We're going to truck the camera right or left. The next one is vertical, and in terms of cameras, we would call this pedestal. We will pedestal the camera up and down, okay? And the last one is the Z space or depth, and for that we will consider that a dolly move. Not zoom, but dolly, okay? So we're going to pedestal the camera up, and to do that we're just going to kind of move down a little bit, and I'm suggesting you go to around 300 or so. Doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to go ahead and roll my mouse back. I don't have much screen space here, so we can kind of see what's going on here. We actually have pulled up the camera so it's kind of looking down on top of this layer. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is use the text tool. Show you a new little trick here, and that is to double click on the text tool. You double click on it, and it's going to create a text layer, and it's going to be perfectly centered in the middle of the screen. Okay. If you look under paragraph, I want to make sure your text is set to centering. And you can use any font you want, but just to make yours look like mine, I would like you to choose Myriad Pro and set the size to 100. And we'll just go ahead and type your name in here. Oh, and I would like for you to set this for 90% white. 90% white. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. You should know all that stuff by now, right? Okay, we need to turn on the 3D switch for this layer. And the next thing we're going to do is to type P for position. So click on the layer and type P, and there's position. And what we want to do is to make the text disappear down into the floor. And so you'll do that by pulling it to the right until it just disappears down into the floor, just like magic. And then you'll click the stopwatch to set a keyframe. And we'll jump out to 4 seconds on the timeline, and we'll pull it up so that it appears out of the floor. And you don't have to go really high in here, something like that maybe, I guess. I don't know. That's up to you, how far you go with the text. Okay, so if we look at this, we're going to see that kind of emotion right here. All right, what I'd like for you to do is to select both of your keyframes. And to do so, all you have to do is click on this word position right here, and that will select both keyframes. And I need for you to easy ease these keyframes. If you're on a PC, you can click the F9 button. If you're on a Mac, you may or may not be able to click F9. I think the other shortcut is Command F9, if I'm not mistaken. I have to sit down at the Mac and see. But for me, I'm just going to go ahead and right click, and I know this is off the screen for you guys, but you would go to Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease. There's Easy Ease. You can see that part at least. And now we have Easy Ease. Here's the fun part, guys. Up here in our little master switches, all of the little icons that are along the top of the timeline are master switches, and this one's called the graph editor. I want to turn on the graph editor, and you will see, let's make one more change while we're in here. Yours might show a different kind of graph, so let me just make sure that you click on this little icon right here. It's the one just to the right of the eyeball, and set it to Edit Speed Graph. And I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but if you click on each one of these points, okay, you're going to see some Bezier handles. And I would love to see you go in and experiment with these. This is going to control the dynamics of the motion. And right now it's a nice smooth motion curve, which means it's going to start out with no acceleration whatsoever, and then you're going to slowly accelerate up to a point where it's going as fast as it's going to go, and then it's going to slow to a stop. Put on the brakes there. Now we can change this by pulling on these Bezier handles, and you can do all kinds of crazy things with these, and I really do want you to jump in there and experiment. But I'm just going to pull the 2 points of the Bezier in, and so what this is going to do is it means that the speed is going to start out very, very slowly, and it's going to spike really quick right in the middle, and then it's going to slow to a stop again. So let's see what that looks like if we render the timeline out. See how it kind of zips out of the floor all of a sudden? There you go, something like that. Okay. So again, you experiment, make the motion however you think looks really good. There are lots of different ways you can do this, but this is a technique that has become just a staple in motion graphics. People never used to fool with this, and now everybody is using the graph editor, so jump on the bandwagon. You use the graph editor too. It will make a huge difference in the way that your objects move. Okay, let's turn that graph editor off, and we look back in the timeline. I'm going to go ahead and twirl up all of these layers now so that we don't have to see all of this stuff. Now we're going to grab the camera and drag it to the top of the layer stack, and we're going to go ahead and manipulate the camera now. So press P for position, and let's make sure that we are at the very beginning of the timeline, and we're going to set a keyframe. And what I want you to do is I want you to truck the camera to the left. And as you truck it to the left, it's going to appear to sort of go off into the distance a little bit, and that's kind of the look that we're going for. And so once you get that, go up to about 4 seconds in the timeline, and we're going to do the same thing to the right. So I'm holding shift now so that this motion occurs really faster. Okay, and so our motion looks like this. Okay, now I would like for you to go again to easy ease both of these keyframes, and so I'm going to again right click, go to keyframe assistant and easy ease, and now we'll open the graph editor. Back to the graph editor there, and I'm just going to make my motion look similar to that of the previous motion that we set up using the text. Doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I'm just trying to make it sort of match what we had going on in the other one, and we end up with something that looks like that. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and dress this up a little bit now. Let's add a couple of lights to the shot, okay? Let me go ahead and turn off the graph editor, and then we'll add a light. I'll go ahead and twirl up the camera too while I'm here. Now we'll add a light. Layer, new, light. And the first light we're going to add is one called an ambient light. This is just going to give kind of a base level of light to the scene. And we're going to set the intensity to 50%. Just like so. And we'll click OK. And now we're going to add another light to the scene. Layer, new, light. And we're going to call this a point light. You know, I probably should have put that in there. Let's go ahead and name this one backlight. Backlight. The type of light is going to be a point light. The intensity is going to be 100. And make sure the little checkbox for cast shadows is turned on. Okay? And click OK. And what you're going to see now is, hopefully, as the text comes out of the floor, we should see some shadows, but we're not seeing shadows. So let's go see what's going on here. Something is missing from this. And so let me go check my two layers to make sure that the text is casting a shadow and the floor is receiving shadows. Okay? I'm going to twirl down the little triangle here, and if we go to the bottom, we'll see something called material options. I'm going to twirl that down, and we should see where it says accepts shadows and casts shadows. Oh look, cast shadows is set to off. So we need to go ahead and turn that on, and we'll go ahead and flip this layer up, and let's see now if we're seeing any shadows. Still not seeing any shadows. So let's continue to look at this and try to diagnose what the problem is. Let's go ahead and go to the floor layer now and twirl it down and make sure under material options that it is set to accept shadows. It does want to accept shadows. So that one's done. Let me go back to my backlight one more time, and let me just double check to make sure I ticked the checkbox, but for some reason maybe it didn't take for me. So let's see if the light itself is casting shadows. And the answer is yes, it's casting shadows. So let's look one more time and see what the problem is here. All right. I still don't see an issue with this. So I'm going to go ahead and reposition this light. Let me go ahead and go get my little arrow here. And notice that there is a little gimbal associated with this light. You'll see the green is pointing upwards. That means that we can change the height of this light. The red here is going to change the horizontal, left or right. And then this blue alters the depth. Oh, look. Suddenly now we see the shadows coming into play. So we can play with this little gimbal a little bit until what I want you to see is nice long shadows like so. So that as it appears out of the floor, we get this really sort of creepy, that kind of look going on. Now you can add more lights to this if you want to. You can animate this light. You can do whatever you want to do. But that is the basics for this little assignment. What do you think? Kind of cool, huh? Okay, I want you to practice this until you have got it down so that you no longer need the instructions anymore. You don't have to rewatch the tutorial 25 times. I want you to just be able to do this in your sleep. Because again, when it comes time for the practical exam, this is basically it. There's a couple of more techniques I'm going to throw at you. You'll learn about those later, but this is the basics for it. All right, so let's move on from this now and get to the meat of this, which is learning how to take this effect and create your 3D photo.